Hello and welcome to Locating Wisdom, the podcast. I'm your host, Fergal. In this episode, we talk to Clare Tate, the visionary behind Chocolatey Clare, a zero-cruelty new Irish chocolate company. So without further ado, let's get into it. So hello, Clare, and thank you very much for coming on to the Locating Wisdom podcast.
Hello, Fergal. It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, no problem. What I'd like to do first is to just get the guests to introduce themselves and their business.
Okay, yes. So my name is Clare, and I have a small chocolate business called Chocolatey Clare. So I actually came up with the name of that before I even knew how to make chocolate, because I like the old puns. So if you say it quickly, it's Chocolatey Clare, obviously. So it's a values-driven business set up specifically on sustainable principles. So my supply chain is entirely 100% ethical. The ingredients are all ethically sourced. The packaging is 100% environmentally friendly, compostable, recyclable packaging with no plastic in it. It's all printed with vegetable-based ink. The chocolate it's a luxury premium product, but it's entirely vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, no palm oil or soy or anything like that in it. And it's aimed at kind of luxury market, but also people who are interested in maybe giving up dairy or maybe they're celiac or something like that, but also aren't overly enamored with maybe very dark chocolate. So it's kind of it's not overloaded with sugar, but it's not too bitter either. So that's the product.
Yeah, and that sounds very interesting, the last point there, because as far as I was aware, vegan chocolate was generally dark chocolate above a certain percentage. That's what I was told, but maybe I was wrong with that.
No, well, vegan chocolate obviously just doesn't have cow's milk in it. But there's a huge range of vegan chocolates now on the market. And in fact, a lot of the big players, the Nestle's, the Mars, all of the Cadbury's, all have vegan chocolate bars, and they use a cow's milk substitute. A lot of them are actually very sweet. Mm-hmm. So my chocolate only has 4 ingredients in it, and it's organic raw cacao nibs from Peru and cacao butter. I use an unrefined organic cane sugar, and then I have 10% of the recipe is organic freeze-dried coconut milk powder. So they're the only ingredients in the chocolate. And a lot of the newer vegan chocolates are kind of aimed at people with a sweeter tooth. And then you do have the more traditional dark chocolates, which a lot of them, not all of them now, but a lot of them would be vegan if they have a higher percentage of cocoa. Some of them still have whey powder as one of the minor ingredients, which is obviously a milk byproduct.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. So only four ingredients within the product itself. That's fantastic. That's without even being vegan, that's just a healthy thing. Like I've always been told the less ingredients on the packet is the healthier it can actually be for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it doesn't even come in a package, that's the healthiest food you can get.
That's true. So so I mean, obviously with the chocolate industry, there's still a lot of slavery and forced labor and child labor, particularly in the West African plantations. So I only deal with suppliers who have a very robust ethics policy. Okay. And I deal with a supplier who works with small organic cocoa farmers in Peru. So and they're involved with humanitarian and environmental projects on the ground there, and they reinvest in reforestation as well in Peru. So I go to as far as I can to make sure that all of my ingredients are sourced ethically. Everybody in the supply chain is properly paid, and hence, it's a luxury item, if you like. But one of my mantras is to buy less but buy better, and I think that basically should apply to everything we buy now.
Absolutely.
I think consumers have all the power, have much more power than they think they do. And, you know, you just vote with your wallet. And if you're not in support of the methods of production or the, you know, even the leanings, the political leanings, or, you know, the way corporations or businesses treat their workforce, if you're not in support of that, then just don't buy from them. So I think that's kind of, you know, it's a fairly easy way of cutting out quite a lot of things as well. But I think it actually behoves us as consumers to find out who we're buying from. You know, I don't think ignorance is really an excuse. All the information is available as to who owns what companies.
Yeah. And,
you know, if you are ethically minded, or if you're conscious of the provenance of your food, then, you know, we should all look at who we're buying from, who we're supporting, who we're paying to produce our food.
Absolutely, yeah. And you touched on a few good points there. Like, we, the consumer, holds all the power. Like, yes. we choose. Like, it is us that shapes the market in that way. And like you said, we have all the information available. If we want to go and look and see who owns the company, what their ethics are. I know Nestle have got themselves in many different
yes, dodgy
scenarios, and there's documentaries and articles, but a lot of people are, I think, maybe want to keep their head in the sand when it comes to stuff like that also.
I agree with you, and I think I mean, I was talking to a young woman at a market I was doing one time, and she said, "Oh, I'm very interested in you know, your chocolate." And she said, I know there are a lot of documentaries, you know, on Netflix or whatever. She said, "I don't want to look at them, because if I did, then I'd have to do something about it." I just thought, you know, that this kind of fingers in your ear, ears philosophy of, oh, if I don't know, then I can't be kind of held responsible for it. You know, I think you do have to have a good reason for changing the way you do things. I mean, having to, or compelling yourself to switch to a different product or a different supplier, you know, maybe you feel your head is too full already, you've enough going on. But I do feel that it's very worthwhile to be proud of what you buy, to be comfortable with what you're spending your money on, and to feel that your money is going to people or companies that align with your own ethics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think from the outside looking in, because I'm not involved in that industry, but I think public sentiment has swayed in the last maybe five years towards being more accountable to what companies that you do support. Would you have noticed that yourself within your industry, from when you started to where you are now, in terms of how customers would approach your product, if they're more willing to go for the higher end product because they know that they're going to be supporting the farmers that are at the very beginning of the supply chain?
Yes, I do think that there's a much more universal consumer awareness of food production. You know, I think it would be hard to ignore it. And I think in theory, practically everybody would say, obviously, they want to support ethical businesses. Obviously, they want people to be paid properly for what they do. You know, we all have a very acute idea of fairness when it comes to ourselves, and, you know, extending that beyond ourselves to other humans, other animals, you know, other treatments of the environment. You know, I think we're all part of the same package, but it takes a little bit of a leap to kind of extend your own personal indignation. If you were shortchanged on something, you'd be, you know, that's, how dare they not pay me properly for that, whatever it is. And yet we are quite happy to say, oh, look at this extraordinarily cheap T-shirt. They look at this extraordinarily cheap food. I'll be having that, thanks. Without thinking, well, obviously, if it's very, very cheap, it's costing somebody dearly, and it's not the people at the top, it's the people at the bottom. So the other thing is, and I do think that sustainability encompasses several strands, and to think that sustainability is only an environmental issue is quite a narrow view of it. I think sustainability encompasses humans and animals and the environment, and without protecting and respecting all of that, then we're missing out on everything, because everything affects the rest. And to say that it doesn't matter if people are treated poorly in warehouses or whatever, I'll still buy from such a platform. That affects, if people are on very low wages, then obviously their limited income is going to be spent on maybe the cheaper stuff. So we're basically compelling people to buy cheap stuff that's made cheaply, where people are not paid properly. So it's like a self-fulfilling wheel that goes around. People should be paid properly. People should have sufficient income to feed themselves and their family proper, nutritious food. People should have enough income to clothe themselves sufficiently, that with clothing that's made ethically, or that's not exploitative. So I do think that it maybe sounds like a bit of a political argument, but I do think that everything is connected, and we don't need to keep on buying stuff. I think we need to consume less, but buy better stuff, buy products and food and clothing and everything, tech, that is produced where people are paid properly, and where there isn't the same level of exploitation as there is for a lot of industries.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you said there. I was actually having a conversation earlier today with a colleague, and we were talking about the 3 Ps of sustainability: people, planet, and profit, of course. But I think the word sustainability, when you hear it now, like, a lot of people don't consider people, as you just said, they just consider environmental aspects of sustainability. But like you said, it all has to be taken into account 100%.
Yeah, I also think that animals are a key part of that. And I think exploitation of animals has resulted in massive detriment to the environment, which is obvious. And even the recent reports of our own waterways in Ireland, where there's like 50% of them are, polluted with nitrates or whatever, largely from animal production, animal farming and rearing.
I heard on sorry to cut across, just to add to that point, I heard on the radio this morning that the EPA released a report on wastewater treatment within Ireland, and there's still 22 or 23 plants that are still releasing raw sewage.
Yeah, crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But there's all that sewage coming from the herds as well. The national herd is producing an awful lot of sewage. Yeah. And like all of that stuff is going into the runoff, into waterways and all of that. So I even apart from the, I would say, objectively miserable lives of the farmed animals, that there is the very detrimental environmental impact also.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's almost that, the way I look at that is, as humans, the way we live, like, we're always going to have some sort of negative impact within our immediate environment. But if we can reduce that negative impact in some way, we definitely should, and especially when it comes to products that we produce, services that we offer as businesses. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And you clearly have a lot of passion. You feel very strongly about that. So would that have been one of the primary reasons for starting your chocolate business?
Yes. So I, along with my husband, became vegetarian at the end of the 80s.
Okay.
And we have 2 adult sons, both of whom are vegetarian from birth. And about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a few things niggling at me about the dairy industry, and I just looked into it, and we looked at it as a family, and we decided, for if we are not supporting, if we're not eating meat for ethical reasons, you could say, then we clearly can't support dairy farming for the same reasons, for the same ethical reasons. So we all gave up. We all became vegan then, about 7 or 8 years ago. And we did look at the documentaries. We did look into it, critically, because it's one of my main considerations is to be critical. And we raised our 2 sons to be critical about everything, which didn't always go in our favor. But however,
did they have any kickback to, like you said, they were vegetarians from birth?
Yeah.
Was there any kickback to that at all? Maybe in the angsty teenage period?
No, it was interesting because they did have pals in school who were completely incredulous that they had never had the chicken nuggets or whatever, and would say, "Oh, I bet you can't wait to leave home so you can start eating the beef burgers." And they were saying, "Well, no, why would I want to do that? It's like you saying to me, 'Oh, let's go and boil up the dog.'" It just makes absolutely no sense. To make no sense to them at all to ever want to. It's like people say, "Do you find it hard not to eat cows?" I said, "Well, do you find it hard not to eat cats?" So of course you don't find it hard not to eat cats. It's the same. And why would you ever want to? That would be my opinion now. And the 2 boys, I'm not prescriptive about their own decisions. Obviously, they're adults. But they are entirely 100% in this philosophy because they're convinced of it, that it is the kindest, I believe, the kindest way of living, that kind of respects and protects all parts of the world, all parts of our planet, and all creatures who share it with us. So I actually don't see any downside whatsoever. My younger son, he's 20 now, I think he was about 13 when we went vegan. But prior to that, he had been very dairy oriented. He loved his cheesy stuff. After about 6 months when we were vegan, I asked him, I said, "Do you miss all your cheesy stuff?" And he said, "Oh, no, Ma'am, it's made with pain." And I just thought, well, that is a very solid way of looking at it. So I actually, because I for decades would not, I don't like the look of meat or in a butcher's counter. I don't like that at all. But when we went vegan first, I still liked the look of cheese. I liked the look of, I would have been quite a cheese, posh cheese kind of person. And because my son had put that into my head, I would look at it then and say, it's made with pain. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, my whole thinking was retrained. And now I can't stand the look of it. I don't like the smell of it, anything about it. So you're conditioned through practice, through your life, thinking, oh, X, Y, Z is gorgeous, whatever that means to you. But a lot of it is an acquired, taste or appreciation or whatever it is you consider to be gorgeous or delicious. And, being objective about something is difficult when your whole self is convinced of this. So it basically retrained my way of thinking. And now, I've zero desire to have any of it.
Any cheese. And just on that, sorry, I know that there are many different vegan cheese varieties, but any that I've had, they haven't been very impressive. But the guest I had on last week, Cian, he actually runs a a vegan protein milk drink company that they started a few months ago. And he mentioned he had heard of a company, and I can't remember the name. He didn't remember the name, so I definitely can't remember the name. But he said I think he tasted it, and it was no different at all than cheese. He couldn't tell the difference. So
yeah, I think traditionally the vegan cheeses have been dire. Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. But there are newer ones coming on the market, which are better. And again, like, cheese is quite addictive. So there is something, that would compel you to eat it. And it is difficult to give up. It's a bit like a drug, I think. It's a bit difficult to give up. But I think that the key to it is to not try to necessarily replace it with something that's exactly the same, because that's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there are newer cheeses which are much better than ones that I tasted, years ago when we started on this. And there are more coming on stream. But, there are plenty of other options. So it's not the only show in town anyway. I mean, I do find people saying, oh, I would give up, or I'd be vegan if it wasn't for the cheese. I'd be vegan if it wasn't for the chocolate, which is one of the reasons I started making the chocolate. I wanted people to have access to a delicious chocolate that doesn't have dairy in it. That kind of would meet your expectations of what chocolate is and what you want it to be, without having any animal products in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned earlier, to buy less but buy higher quality goods. Yeah, I'm fully on board with that as well. It kind of ties into the circular economy idea. And also, like, chocolate, we all know, is not very good. No, well, it's not that it's not good for us, but we shouldn't be eating it every day. It needs to be eaten within moderation. So if you're, it's going to be good for me, anyone as the consumer, to actually buy less. And
yes,
and yeah, and like your ethos to, you're buying less, but at least it's all going to find its way to suppliers and farmers along the food chain. Yeah, no, big fan of that ethos. I mentioned, I seen somewhere on your website, was it a sustainability policy or a sustainability document that you have as well that you've?
Yes. So I decided to put together a sustainability charter and basically document all the principles behind my business. It was actually quite good for me to put it down in a framework like that, and to recognize that my principles affect every decision that I make, every business decision and every personal decision. And that doesn't mean that I spend my whole day going, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's actually, it's
liberating, nearly, is it?
It's an easy way of choosing. It's an easy way of deciding. There's so much choice in every aspect of life, every purchase. There's loads and loads of choice. So if you can kind of narrow it down according to, what are the principles of this supplier? What are the ethics? What are the methods? What are, do I agree with that? Do I want to give them my money? What am I paying for here? And one way that I kind of investigate, companies or any kind of concept is, even if I am already convinced of it as being, what suits me, I would type in to Google, what's wrong with, and then whatever it is, what's wrong with X, and get all the counter arguments. Get all, I think it's crucial to get all sides of an argument so that you can make an informed decision, to not only look at documentation that already agrees with you. I think that's a mistake. I think, I can't remember what I was looking for, and my son was here looking over my shoulder. He said, oh, why are you looking at that website? Because it was the direct opposite of what he would have thought I'd be interested in. I said, I need to find out the arguments, the basis for this argument as to what they're putting forward. Why are they suggesting that this is the way to do it? I mean, ultimately, I came to the same conclusion as I had before I started. But you need to arm yourself with facts. You need to furnish yourself with proper, critically worked out opinions that you are then happy to stand by.
Absolutely. And then you have more confidence when you are talking about what you're talking about, when you know that you've covered the entire playing field, that you've seen every inch of grass as such, that you can have confidence in your decisions and why you've taken them decisions. It's very, I think everyone should do a good deep dive analytical think about their actions and why they decide to do what they decide to do. I think it would clear a lot of things up for individuals. Like for myself, I've started doing that in the last few months, and yeah, it brings a sense of clarity and purpose behind what you actually do. And I recommend everyone to think deeper about exactly what their actions and why they choose to do what they do.
Yeah, it's like doing an audit on yourself, really.
Yeah, an audit, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not very comfortable sometimes.
Absolutely,
because,
yeah. Looking in the mirror is difficult.
There's a bit of pain in switching to something else, to an alternative. There's a bit of pain in that. But I mean, if you have good reasons to do something, I think actually you need good reasons in order to switch successfully. There's no point in doing things. I don't think there's much point in doing something on a whim that you haven't worked out clearly why you're doing it, because you're not as likely to stick with it.
Well, yeah,
if you're not clear what's the purpose.
When a difficult moment comes, you can be more easily swayed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with that. I did it was like an endurance event. It's called a 4x4x48, where we had to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So we had to keep getting up in the night to do the runs.
Wow.
And me and my friend was staying at my house when we did it. And I said to him, we need to have a clear idea exactly why we're doing this, or else 4 o'clock in the morning is going to come and we're going to be like, nah, let's just stay in bed. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we needed to have a clear idea that we could hold up under a microscope and say, okay, we need to get out of bed. We have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did it.
Yeah, oh, yeah, we did it. Yeah, we did it. It was tough. It's funny though, like, I think around the second or third last one, like, we started to pick up the pace because we were tracking our, pace the whole time. And no matter how tired you think you are, like, you were just able to push through and get a. I think my fastest one was my second last one. Now, my last one, I was absolutely goosed, but the second last one, I think it was the fastest one I did over. Yeah, I think it was 12 runs. Like, so it's mad what you can do when you really want to push it.
Exactly. Yes, you can surprise yourself.
And Claire, was there any books in particular that influenced you when you were starting your Chocolatey Clare business?
Yes, well, there was a book that influenced me back in the 80s, in the late 80s, and did actually change my life. It is a book called Living Without Cruelty, and it's by a guy called Mark Gold. And it definitely changed my life, because I knew one vegetarian at that time. He was an ex-boyfriend of my sister's, and it was weirder being a vegetarian in the 80s than it is being a vegan nowadays, basically, with far less choice. But anyway, he was vegetarian because he had zero interest in being a vegetarian, hadn't thought about it at all until he took a summer job in a slaughterhouse. And then after like a very short period decided, well, I'm not going to support this anymore. So he became a vegetarian, and I had interesting chats with him. And there was kind of an ethereal concept in my head about why it was a good idea and that I was interested in it. And but this book, Living Without Cruelty, it really consolidated my ideas, and it put a framework on what it meant and what was involved. And it did, provide facts and arguments as to why it was a logical way of living. And also going back to a previous point we made, he was talking about injustice. So, for example, if you say you're against injustice and you choose like, oh, I'm against X type of injustice. However, I'm quite fine with Y type of injustice. That doesn't bother me at all. That doesn't make sense. So if you are against injustice as a concept, then you have to apply it to every aspect. So hence, workers' rights or animals, industrially farmed animals, or, people trashing the environment, all of those types of things, or political regimes or those kind of systems. If you're against injustice, then you have to apply it universally. So anyway, this book, Living Without Cruelty, was a huge factor in me basically confirming that it was the way that I wanted to live, and confirming that there was a pathway to do it. And then in fact, once you've decided that there's a framework and that it's worth doing, it is actually very, very easy. And myself and my husband, when we declared ourselves vegetarian back then, it was like a massive release that we didn't have to eat meat when we went to his mum's house for Sunday dinner or whatever. That it was huge. So it never felt like it was restricting. It felt like it was a massive embrace of something bigger. So that was the book that really I think changed my life. There was another book, I was thinking about it, that I remember very, very fondly from my childhood, and it's a seemingly very frivolous book called 15 by an author called Beverly Cleary. And the reason that it meant so much to me was I read it when I was 12. And at that stage, my grandmother lived with us. My parents were already dead. My father died when I was 12. My mother died when I was 9. My grandmother came to live with us. Now, she wasn't our guardian. My aunt was our guardian, but my grandmother came to live with us as well. But she was a very rigid, strict, prescriptive type of person who compelled us basically to go to the local library every week, which was fine. That was a good thing to do. But she had only certain approved authors, basically. So you had to come back with books by, classic authors, or ones she were on the okay list for her. And this book that I picked up, I'd spotted, and it was called 15. And the opening line is, "Today I'm going to meet a boy." And I just, and she completely disapproved of this book. And I just thought it was the first time that I read something that I wasn't really allowed to or wasn't supposed to. And it was subject matter that was entirely alien to me, this whole concept of, meeting boys or having a boyfriend or being, even being pretty or going out. But it actually, it allowed me to dream about something else. And I just felt that it kind of opened up a little bit of a fantasy kind of a world, but it was also not unattainable. And then actually I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. And it really brings home to me how I don't think books should be, approved of or allowed or prescribed or, only kind of certain books are worth reading. I don't think that's true. Yeah. And I worked for about 10 years in the adult literacy sector, and all reading, all books, any literature or anything you want to call it, that allows you to dream or find information or think is worth reading. So that's why that particular kind of book also stood with me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that kind of, we have a bit of an issue today with censorship and, information being censored. And like you said there earlier as well, you like to see both sides of the story to get a full understanding of a situation. But if we're being censored, we can't actually get both sides of the story. So yeah, no, I find that a very interesting point. Just about censorship, and obviously it was your grandmother placing the censorship upon you at that time. But yeah, no, it's amazing as well, like how certain, like how when we are introduced to different media. So like that book at that certain time had such an impact on you, but maybe if you read it a year before, you wouldn't have even cared about it. Do you know?
Yeah.
A book I mentioned actually on the last podcast as well, a book that I read was called Psycho-Cybernetics. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It's basically just a book, kind of like a self-improvement book, but that entire concept was completely alien to me before I read it. And once I read that book, that whole sort of world opened up to me. But yeah, it was just the right book at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I find it very fascinating. But could you speak to us a bit, Claire, please, about the chocolate making process itself? I saw a couple of videos on YouTube where you have a mold and it's filled with chocolate, and then you place the filling inside and then put the mold on top. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong with that, but is that a rough idea of how it's made?
So yeah, when I started this chocolate business, I didn't know anything. So I literally Googled, how do you make chocolate? And had a look at a lot of recipes, and basically, played around with ingredients and quantities and came up with a recipe that I was happy with. And there was a lot of experimentation and a lot of trial and error. And yes, basically, when I started, I had no equipment at all, really. I had a tiny little, melter and a small pot, which I used to make the chocolate in, and a little temperature gun, which I was trying to use to temper the chocolate, which was very hit and miss because it has to get to certain temperature, and in order to be, to be stable when it's set. But so basically, then I would pour the chocolate into the molds, or like the first layer of it, and then put in, say, I had organic freeze-dried raspberries or strawberries, or I'd salted peanuts, or I'd something else, put it in, and then cover that with another layer of chocolate, and then it'll be let set for a while, and then it contracts when it's set, and then you just flip it out onto the table. I have since got a chap to make the chocolate for me, because I was trying to do everything myself. And I didn't have proper equipment, and I didn't have full-time access to the kitchen I was working out of. Yeah. So I came to a decision point where I had to basically decide whether I was going to invest in my own kitchen, a load of proper equipment, maybe hire somebody, or outsource the production. So I already knew some chocolate makers. So find somebody who already had the type of equipment that was needed, who I knew well, who I could train with my particular recipe, who I knew had a dairy-free and a gluten-free kitchen. So basically that's what I did, because that was far less risky than me investing a load of money. And also I really didn't want to be in a position where I was responsible for somebody else's wages if things went wrong. So that's what I did. So I now, because he has, much better equipment than I ever had, I could afford to basically change up the recipe a little bit and get the raw cacao nibs, which are like basically little pieces of the cocoa bean, and so they now can be ground down with the cocoa butter and the unrefined cane sugar, and then the coconut milk powder. And then that's let now grind away for, 24, 36 hours, something like that.
Oh.
So then it's poured into the mold. So it's still the system is still then the same. Once the chocolate is done, it's hand poured into the molds. The fillings are put in, the inclusions they're called, and it's all set, and they're all wrapped by hand as well. So I have these little compostable wrappers for the chocolate bars. They're like little pockets. So the chocolate bar goes in there and it's hand sealed, and then it goes into a little cardboard box.
Okay. And so the wrappers themselves for the chocolate are compostable. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
fantastic.
it's a cellulose based material that looks like plastic and behaves like plastic in the ways that are positive. So, for example, it is a proper barrier for the food. It can be heat sealed. But because it looks like plastic, I basically got printed on it, made from compostable material, because I didn't want people to think, oh, she's gone back to using plastic in her packaging, which is not what I was doing. It's home compostable as well. So if you have your compost bin, you can use that, or your municipal brown bin.
Yeah.
So that's, I wanted everything right down to the packaging to be as sustainable as I can manage it.
Yeah, fantastic. And you touched on, so did you bring another person into your business, or is it sort of partnership that he makes the chocolate?
Well, I outsourced the production to him, he's not an employee as such. No, I pay him for what he does for me.
Yeah.
So I would tell him I need X, Y, and Z, and he makes that now for me, which is brilliant. It has allowed me to try to promote the business a bit more, try to expand and try and scale up a little bit. I was having tremendous difficulties in marketing myself. It's my least skill, I think. It's
the most difficult thing for a business. You can have the best product in the world, but if no one knows about it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I think I'm not very good at it. I'm very hesitant. I'm very self-conscious. And I'm thinking, I spend a lot of my time going, how am I going to bring this chocolate in front of more people? Because I do genuinely believe that more people would like my chocolate than think they would. It's not a chocolate that's only for vegans. It's not only for celiacs. It's not only for people who are zero waste or that. It's like, most of my customers aren't any of those. Most of my customers are people who love chocolate, like a rich tasting chocolate. And people would say to me, oh, a lot of the bigger brands now, the flavor has gone down. They're putting palm oil in it and fillers in it and other types of fats or whatever. And they find that they're horsing into the 100-gram bar because they're actually not getting a satisfactory chocolate feeling. So, a purer, richer chocolate with fewer ingredients, you're getting like a better cocoa taste and a better feeling and a richer flavor and a more satisfactory experience. So that's kind of what I was aiming for. So, one of the things is persuading, people of a wider audience that they might like the chocolate. And that's kind of a big challenge now for me.
Yeah. I think there's a certain stigma that comes with when you're gluten-free or vegan, that it's going to
taste like grass.
Yeah, that it's going to have a more umami taste, or a more robust sort of taste that isn't what you're used to. But like you say, you have full confidence in that your product is delicious, and I'm sure it is. I'm actually sorry I didn't get a chance to try one yet, but I definitely 100% will. I asked around, and one of my friends had tried it, and he said it was delicious.
Oh, excellent. I'm delighted to hear that. Yeah, I kind of, when you're working for yourself as well, you basically feel like you're talking into a vacuum. I have no massive feedback as to what the general opinion is. And now I know it's not for everybody. I mean, not everybody likes Mars bars, so it'll be ridiculous to think that everybody would like it. But I do think it would have a wider audience appreciation than the audience might anticipate.
Yeah. And would you find, so you've been in the vegan chocolate space for, I assume, longer than the bigger companies would have been in the vegan chocolate space.
Yes.
Would you find that them entering the space has brought more awareness or brought awareness, which has raised the profile of vegan chocolate, which maybe has improved sales for you? Or would you find that it's increased competition and sales maybe aren't as, or are struggling because of the big players moving into the market?
Yeah, well, obviously the big players have huge advantages. They have their network there already. Yeah, they have their customer base, they have their network, they have their massive marketing,
their outlets as well.
Teams, absolutely, sure, they're everywhere. We mentioned Nestle before. I mean, I haven't bought anything from Nestle for decades and decades. And to me, being vegan is part of being ethical. And it's not just about the food. Now, I understand that some vegans don't think like that at all. They think, oh, if the product doesn't have animal ingredients in it, then, you know, the rest is irrelevant. So to me, it's a bit of an anathema that Nestle is promoting vegan products. But, you know, I think it depends on the purchaser. It depends on the consumer. It is certainly better for the animals that the products are vegan. So I think there's still a place for products like mine that have like a fully sustainable, ethical credentials, because in those departments, we can certainly stand up to the bigger players. And I think even from a taste perspective, we can stand up against the bigger players on a range. You know, people like different things. People like different tastes and different flavors. That's absolutely fine. The point is that there's choice. The point is that there are options. And, you know, I don't think that the bigger players being on the market has made it any easier for anybody to buy my stuff. Absolutely not. But then again, there are more people choosing to buy vegan stuff. So there are still proportion of people who would say, you know, I will still buy from a small ethical brand rather than from Nestle. So swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. And when you entered the marketplace initially, like you mentioned, you had zero experience in chocolate making. So I assume zero experience in the retail industry in terms of having a product to market.
Oh, zero. Yes, absolutely. I knew nothing.
And did you find it, were you introduced to any business mentors through any programs that the likes of local enterprise.ie offered or anything like that?
Yes. So the first program I did was the Dublin food chain and SuperValue run the Food Academy. So I did that, which was marvelous for me because, you know, as I said, I had no clue whatsoever. Now, as it turned out, ultimately, being in a supermarket wasn't the best place for my type of product. You know, if you're beside the 2-for-1 Mars bars, you're kind of, unless somebody is specifically looking for your type of product, I found it kind of difficult. Where my chocolate sits better would be in like a high-end food hall type place or like cafes
or something like that. Or shop, or
yeah, I do have a bit of a problem with Avoca because they're owned by Aramark, and Aramark run the catering for the some of the direct provision centres. So I deliberately don't engage with Avoca. Now maybe they wouldn't want me either, but you know, I kind of I try and choose my platforms very carefully. I mean, for example, I won't even sell on Amazon. I think you know, I don't agree with the way they pay or don't pay their taxes, or pay or don't pay their people properly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you might say that I'm cutting out a load of options for myself, but I would prefer to be able to stand over my choices.
No, it's very, very, it's a very noble decision, and it goes back to your sustainability mandate, is it?
Yes, yeah, it does. It does, definitely. And I think, I do think that people appreciate when you explain your reasons for doing things or not doing other things. I think a lot of people appreciate that. I mean, I'm having a current issue where one of my products is hand-painted chocolate bonbons. I don't know if you saw them on the website. They're a fairly kind of luxury, posh item. And Brown Thomas in Dublin had said they would take them in and stock them, but subject to a packaging upgrade. And so there ensued a circuitous chase around the world for ethical packaging. And I discovered that most of kind of rigid posh packaging is made in China ultimately, even if you're dealing with an agency or whatever in Europe. Now, not all, but that most of it was made in China. And I can't stand over that, obviously. I don't buy anything from an oppressive regime. So I kind of said, well, I can't go down that route. So anyway, I have ultimately then settled on a packaging company which is actually based in the UK, and they have their products, their packaging is manufactured in the UK, and they have a whole set of vegan packaging, like including vegan inks and vegan glue and all that kind of thing. So I'm very, very pleased. It's in process at the moment. I should have the actual packaging, and it'll be very posh, and it'll be very luxurious, and it'll be fantastic. And I'm delighted because there were suggestions that look at, it's going to be more expensive if you go for ethical packaging. It's going to be more expensive, obviously. Why don't you park that for now? Get the stuff in China so that you can get it on the market and you can be ethical later. And I thought that doesn't sit well with me. Now, obviously, I did get some quotes that were through the roof, and I said, well, maybe I'm going to have to just abandon this idea altogether. But this particular packaging company, and their design company as well, that I'm now working with, I'm really, really pleased with them, and I think it's going to strike a balance that's it's going to be brilliant, a great solution in the end.
Fantastic. You stuck to your guns.
Stuck to my guns, yeah, exactly. Because I was thinking I'm just going to have to abandon it. I can't just say, oh, well, sure, look, to hell with it all, I'll buy the stuff from China. That would make no sense to me. And, anybody who would like to say, well, hang on, what happened this ethical supply chain you were banging on about 10 minutes ago, that's gone out the window. I think, I really genuinely think that any business person needs to be authentic. You need to be transparent. You need to be able to stand over your decisions. And if your customers poke at you, you need to be able to explain yourself. And that's what I try to do.
So once you get that packaging sorted, we'll be able to find you in Brown Thomas then?
Yes, so that's the plan. And
fantastic.
Brown Thomas is owned by the same people who own Harrods and various other posh places. So I'm hoping that it'll be like a launching pad as well for me to get into the higher end places, because I think even but even people with loads of money, surely they want to be ethical at this stage of the game. So to present consumers with a luxury posh item that is fully ethical as well and sustainable, I'm hoping that that'll be a winning combination.
Absolutely. And yeah, it probably is more your target market.
Well, I think so, because obviously my chocolate is expensive compared to other chocolates. You know, with the floods of cheap chocolate on the market, because you know a lot of the stuff is sourced through, you know, whatever forced labor or whatever, then obviously you can provide products that are cheap. But it does leave people with an impression that chocolate should be cheap. And this is kind of a bit of a battle for chocolate businesses like myself, who are saying, well, look, at if the products are produced ethically, then there is a higher price. You know, that's logical and that makes sense. And chocolate, I really do believe, should be a luxury item, that you do savor and you do kind of eat less of. You choose it carefully, you enjoy it thoroughly, and you eat less of it. That's what I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to the outdated now food pyramid. It's at the very top, eaten
yes.
in very moderate. Yeah, no, fantastic, and all the best with that, and hopefully the packaging comes soon, and we can find you in Brown Thomas and other stores like that. That would be a huge achievement. And when that happens, do you have capacity in place that you would be able to start to produce a lot more if the demand was to have a big jump all of a sudden? Would you have capacity to meet that?
Well, yeah, the guy who's making the chocolate for me already, he is only the one person, but he has got some help in now as well. He is an extremely busy guy, with a very professional outfit that he has running. So I think there is capacity there, even within my current context, to scale up a little bit, because I'm not very good at marketing. I don't have a huge number of outlets. I don't have massive sales by any means at all. So I'm hoping to even just progress. You know, I'm not talking about world domination, but it hasn't reached the point where I would have to maybe look at different ways of production even, I don't think, at this stage.
What would you say your first big success in the business was that you had to really work for, and it's something that just didn't come easy for Chocolatey Clare, the business, that was a real milestone that you hit?
I think, I'll be very honest with you, I don't feel very successful. I feel that there's still a lot of potential there with Chocolatey Clare that has not been reached. And part of my current challenge is actually knowing how to reach that potential. I mean, obviously, when my website went live, and the first time I got this ping on my Shopify thing saying that somebody bought something, that was like extraordinary, and I actually set the tone to associate it with the sale on Shopify to be that old-fashioned ka-ching kind of sound, and it just made me laugh. But that was a huge boost for me. That basically that anybody, any randomer who wasn't my family would want to buy it was massive achievement for me, and I still feel hugely appreciative when people buy it. And like I on my website, I have I obviously gather reviews from people who have bought it, and they are hugely gratifying for me, because the vast majority of the reviews are overwhelmingly positive. And I really do appreciate people taking the time to do that, because often even myself, you're in a place or you get service and you think that is outstanding, and you intend to write a review, and then sometimes it goes out of your head and you don't get around to it. So I hugely appreciate people doing that. and all of those sales, every single sale that I get, I feel is a massive achievement. And I you know, I think getting into Brown Thomas, hopefully now that will actually materialize. I think getting into Brown Thomas will be a huge, huge achievement for me.
Yeah, absolutely would. I really appreciate the answer there. You know, you obviously take great pride in the business, and like every single sale really means a lot to you. Yeah, no, fantastic. That was a great answer. Thanks for that. I'm actually, I'm intrigued to hear your answer to the next questions, because as you touched on, buy less, but buy better. So one of the questions that I like to ask people is something that you've bought in the last 2 years or so for a relatively small amount. So let's say under 100, under 150 euro, that has had a great impact on your life. Not even necessarily the business, but just in general.
Oh, well, I can think of a few things. And like, I'm actually a very frugal, should I say, I'm a very frugal buyer. So, I mean, even if you said under 100 quid, I'm going, what, 100 quid? One of the best things I ever bought in my life was a raincoat with a kind of a lovely warm lining, and it's 100% waterproof, and I love it. Every time I put it on, I think this is the best purchase of my life. Living in Ireland, it's cozy and warm and waterproof, and it enables me to go anywhere. Like it actually is now completely irrelevant what the weather is like, because I can put this coat on, and it's because it's also kind of fairly lightweight. It's not a big bulky yoke. It's a lightweight, cozy. It's ideal, perfect, 100% waterproof coat that goes down as far as my knees, and it allows me to do everything. So I would consider that one of my best purchases ever.
Fantastic. And was it a certain brand or?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. It's one of those kind of standard brands. I did the kind of outdoor gear brands.
Yeah.
Which I actually can't remember now what brand it is. But yeah, it's it's one of my favorite things in the world.
Fantastic answer. Can't go wrong with a good raincoat.
I do think that something that allows you to do something else is a great purchase.
Yes, good point. Absolutely. Rather than just being an end.
Yes.
An end point.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose then to that end, was something that I bought, or not bought, I traded for. I traded an Xbox 360 for a surfboard, and that was one of the best things Brilliant. That I bought in my life, and it allows me obviously to go surfing. The surfboard on its own is no good unless you take it out into the water.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it was 150 euro. We agreed the rough trade value.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of opens a door to a whole load of other things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would possibly then making a new set of friends or whatever in the surfing community.
100%, yeah. And yeah, friends, and opening up your eyes, like to a lot more stuff. Kind of like what I said earlier with the book, at a certain time, you go surfing and you kind of opens your mind, introduces you to new ideas, new people. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, even at that, I went to college and I did environmental science. That's what I did in college. And what inspired me to actually do that was going surfing. I thought, okay, I want to try and do something in college that's beneficial for me, but also that I can help the environment. So I thought I'd be an environmental scientist. But I don't know if my career path after that has been helpful towards the environment, but I had good intentions at the time, for sure.
Yeah, but I do think that obviously the knowledge and the insight that you gained doing that course will affect how you proceed then, even if you end up in a different type of job, but it will affect everything that you do then, I would imagine.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it definitely shapes your ideas. Yeah. Yeah. Everything that you're exposed to, programs you in a certain way, whether that's positively or negatively. But yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I don't regret doing it. Definitely not. It was definitely a good decision.
I started off in a completely different career. As I say, I didn't know anything about the food industry at all when I started. When I started the chocolate business, I left college in 1987 as a German translator, and I worked as a technical translator for with Nixdorf, as they were at the time, in Dublin for 7 or 8 years, and I set up my own German translation company, and I worked with a friend of mine.
So you've always been an entrepreneur?
Well, I really liked being my own boss. I really liked having control over the way I spend my time and how I do a job and my methodology. And I have always been very diligent and quite precise in what I'm doing and the way I'm doing it. And I have to say, the translation business was vastly more lucrative than the chocolate business, and vastly easier at the time. But I mean, obviously it was the 90s, so we got the the documentation, whatever it was, the computer manuals in German, and we typed over them in English, and you sent them back, but it was dial-up internet. So sending a document back, you had to allow like several hours for this because it would keep bombing out.
Yeah.
So there were different times. But one thing that I'm vastly proud of in my translation sphere was during that time when the former Yugoslavia was at war. My very, very close friend was an international human rights lawyer, and she realized, obviously, that regardless of what crimes are committed or what atrocities happen, if they're not documented, then they become invisible.
Yeah.
And the people have to be held accountable. So herself and other translators, a Croatian woman and a variety of other people, went over to the former Yugoslavia and took statements from witnesses of what had happened during this war. And some of the witness statements were in German for some reason. So I took on the task of translating a body of evidence against a particular guy. And this evidence was heartbreaking, basically. I would be crying over it. It was like nothing I'd ever done in my life. And it was to be used in the War Crimes Tribunal, which was set up in The Hague. Specifically, this was the start of the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague, as far as I'm aware. And anyway, that was something I did. I translated this body of evidence against this particular guy. Afterwards, I think it was the following spring or whatever, myself and my husband were going over to California. He was doing some work over there for a short period, and on the plane on the way over, they used to have these in-flight magazines, and the middle page spread of this magazine was this big article about one of the first guys who was convicted at the War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague, and a picture of him was the guy the evidence against whom I had translated.
Wow.
And that, I think, was one of the greatest achievements. One of the things I was most proud of in my life was contributing to that.
Wow, Yeah, that's not an everyday story, that you're involved with the conviction of war criminals in what
Yeah.
was a terrible and brutal war.
Yes.
Wow, fantastic.
So I think we all have, obviously people's lives are, encompass loads of different spheres, loads of, concentric uh, ideas and concepts and involvements in a whole load of things that overlap or don't overlap or seemingly don't overlap, but quite often they do. And what affects you in one sphere obviously is going to spill over into a different sphere, or what you learn in one instance from one set of friends, affects you and affects how you behave with everybody. So I think everything that happens to you and everything that you do and everything you contribute to or don't contribute to, all goes to make up the type of person you are and how you ultimately behave and stay true to yourself as you mature as well, because obviously your opinions might change. And I like that quote from Muhammad Ali, who said, I think the quote is, "He who has the same opinions at 50 as he had at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life." I think that you have to be open to changing your opinion and not being entrenched about what you 100% think is absolutely accurate and true in the face of evidence to the contrary. I think you have to be mature enough to look and to investigate it, to be critical of your own opinions, to be critical of your own stance on everything. And that's what allows you to grow.
Yeah, 100%. And to not take everything at face value that you might be told.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Claire, do you have any mindfulness or meditation practices that you would practice, or any sort of release that you have from being a stressful entrepreneur / business director?
Well, I do absolutely love the sound of birds singing. I absolutely love it. And when I realized that obviously you can actually get this, bird song on your, whatever streaming platform you have. And I actually put that on sometimes when I'm getting ready in the morning. So rather than, it depends on the humor, but I love that woodlandy bird song peacefulness. And like I would listen to that. I just find it very, very calming. I do that. I have a very small little garden out at the back, and what we have done is we've kind of made it bee friendly, and we have a little hedgehog, I think, who lives under our shed, and like lots of there's blackbirds in our trees and all of those kind of things that I absolutely love. And if I look out the top window here, it's like a grid of gardens that I'm looking out on, and as far as I can see, we have the kind of the one with the most flora, yeah, the foliage, and a bit wild, a little bit, but I just love that. I love the different berries, the different colored leaves, I love all of that, rather than the curse of the fake grass and, the completely manicured to an inch of its life sort of gardens that I kind of find a bit soulless. I just find that even going out there into our little space and listening to the birds and kind of just looking at the bees on our plants or whatever, I like that. That kind of grounds me, I think. I just find a small bit of nature. It doesn't even have to be a massive big, forest, but I do love forests. My dad always loved forests, and we used to go there every week, whether we liked it or not. We used to go for forest walks, and I think that has stayed with me all my life. The peacefulness and the earthiness and the life and the joy in forests. And it's called, I think the Japanese called it, I don't know what the Japanese word is, I forget it now, but it's forest bathing, basically, where you can allow yourself to be just flooded with the atmosphere of a forest. I think is very, very good for everybody. If you can find yourself one, or even a tiny bit of nature somewhere.
Good for the soul.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a great answer. Yeah. So it kind of resets you. Just being in nature can recharge your batteries.
Yes. And actually, do you know what I mean? I do feel we can all get really caught up with nitty gritty that's basically nonsense. And like, if you can recognize that what you're worried about is absolute nonsense and, practically irrelevant, then, that's a bit of a release as well, without being completely existentialist about it. But I do think that, part of existentialism is obviously having control over your own destiny and your own path and all that, which I think everybody should have, and questioning your place in the world, in the universe, is perfectly reasonable. And actually, it's a positive thing to do. Thinking that you're the light, the sun, moon, and stars comes out of yourself is nonsense. So, being aware of the smallness of you is actually a release. It's great, small and mighty. I mean, we all have a part to play, and anybody who says like, "Oh, for example, I don't vote. My vote is useless." I go, "Oh, everybody's vote is crucial." And for example, Hitler was voted head of his political party by one vote.
Really?
And I think in America, when they were deciding the language of, Parliament, was it going to be English or German? English won out by one vote. There's loads and loads and loads of examples where one vote is crucial. So, I mean, I always say to my vote for everything, and I say you have to vote. I mean, even if the other person's opinion is the polar opposite of your own, that's democracy. That's it's crucial to vote. Anyway, I got a bit sidetracked there, but as opposed to being small and worthless, I don't think that at all. I think small but absolutely mighty and crucial to the overall fabric. Everything is made up of tiny particles, and each of them is crucial. So that's your place in the universe, a tiny crucial particle.
Yeah. I heard an exercise before. I think it's a Stoic exercise where the Stoic would sit and think about his place in the world. So maybe I'm sitting here in my room and I'm thinking about my problems, my issues, my life. And if I was to go up and look down on this estate, on this road, I might find 6, 7 other people on the road. They all have their own problems. Zoom out again, the estate, thousands. Zoom out the city, zoom out to the world, zoom out to the planet. And it kind of puts in perspective how small and, not insignificant that your issues are, but how much more there is in the world than, your particular small issues that you might be dealing with, or even bigger issues. But yeah, no, it definitely helps to put perspective on your own life. And like you say, I find that liberating rather than making you feel worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good exercise to take part in from time to time.
I do think that, being orphaned in my childhood, definitely influenced my perspective on the world. And I suppose that same incident, if you want to call it that, propelled me in one direction initially, and then years later, as I matured, in the diametrically opposite direction. So initially, I definitely felt desolate and worthless, and what was the point? So I had my own little nihilistic anxiety when I was 12, and that did make me extraordinarily miserable, I suppose, and also self-conscious and withdrawn through teens and through early life. But ultimately, I think being aware of the inevitability of death, as we all know, but like having that awareness as a child, as opposed to it being like an ethereal concept that might never apply to you, which is what most children or even adults who haven't a direct experience of death, it's something that you kind of would be surprised or astounded at the first time it happens, that people I love can also die. Whereas having that very direct knowledge as a child definitely affects how I behaved, how I valued other people, how I valued myself initially. And then ultimately, as I say, it propelled me into the direction of enormously valuing everybody, enormously feeling the how worthwhile it is to participate, how worthwhile it is to be part of some kind of community, whether it was in a sport or in the school or in your whatever it is, that's also a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you say, I'm worthless and useless and nobody wants to interact with me, I'll shut myself away. Well, obviously, you're not interacting with anybody. You're absolutely correct. Nobody is going to, very few people are going to get in there. So it's a self-fulfilling kind of a philosophy. Whereas then, if you say, I want to interact with people, I want to engage with people, I want to value people, I want to be part of something, then that just grows organically. And, the groups or the people that you engage with and interact with and grow with, the value compounds itself.
Yeah.
And it's immeasurably more worthwhile to be part of that than to disengage from it.
Yeah. 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 No, fantastic. And yeah, like you say, it compounds. And yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, it must have been very, very, very obviously very difficult losing your parents at such a young age, and like you say, like that has probably driven you to be self-reliant and basically an entrepreneur your whole life.
Yeah, I think it probably did affect me, and it does. Again, talking about getting the bigger picture, it definitely allowed me to see a bigger picture of what maybe I could do or what I could achieve. I've never been particularly confident in my own abilities at all, even now. But I, I try to assure myself that clearly I'm able to do stuff, even if I have to kind of convince myself, clearly you're able to do it. And being frozen in a kind of inaction is what I spent too many years doing, like when I was a child and a teenager, where I didn't basically allow myself to to risk anything, to try anything, to do anything. So, it's uncomfortable then coming from that to propel yourself into situations where you're visible and where people can see if you do well or you don't do well, which I was never comfortable with. But the upside then is when you do achieve things, obviously, when you do, and even if you don't do everything right, and who's going to do everything right, achieving things that you didn't think you were able for, or that, that make you proud of yourself. And I think that has tremendous amount of value, even if what you're providing is only chocolate, for goodness sake. It's not, it's in itself probably irrelevant, but it does offer an option for people who want to choose products that maybe respect the world in the way that they would like to. So I think that, whereas, maybe on the face of it, it's an irrelevant product. I think, like we were talking about earlier, it's something that allows people to make, what could be seen as more positive, sustainable choices.
Yeah, no, it's exponentially better for you for anyone as a person to be brave and put themselves out there and to follow their dreams, their passions. And I think what you've done, anyone who starts a company, anyone who steps out there and does something like that, it's tremendously difficult to put yourself there in the first place. Never mind all the work that goes into putting the business together. So you should be very proud of yourself. It's not everyone can actually do it. So fair play. But I just going to wrap it up with one final question that I like to ask at the end. Where do you see the business Chocolatey Clare in 5 years' time?
5 years' time. Well, it is quite interesting, because every year of this business, I always say to myself, I'll give it another year and see how it goes, because it's been a very gradual growth.
Yeah.
Because, I'll be 57 in a couple of weeks. I was never interested. When I started this business, I wasn't interested in borrowing loads of money or getting into debt, or, so I'm a bit risk averse, really, as an older entrepreneur. In 5 years' time, then I'll be 62. Where will it be? I would like to see Chocolatey Clare as being a really well-respected brand. And I think with a loyal, albeit small, possibly, customer base, I think that all the decisions I make and all the, choices and avenues I pursue, I want the brand to be respected for what it stands for. That's where I'd like to see it.
Fantastic. That's a very honorable goal. And Claire, can you tell us, so what shops currently can we find your products, and what's the website that we can order directly from?
Yeah, so I have a shop on my website. It's called chocolateyclare.com. And I might even spell that, because I tell you what, the first time I did business cards, it was a lesson in how you shouldn't sign off on something at 2:00 in the morning. I was designing them myself, obviously, and I spelt Chocolatey Clare wrong. When they arrived in the house, I went, oh, jeepers. So it's CHOCOLATEY and then CLARE, which is my name. So chocolateyclare.com. I have a shop on the website, and I have a list of stockists there. Not very many, but I am hoping to, get footholds into more places. I always say to customers as well, if there are places you think where the chocolate would suit, cold calling and cold emailing retail outlets is really not much fun for anybody. But
No.
I do it as well, to try and put myself out there, to try and just to get people to see that I exist, because I do think that it is a product that answers a load of questions, and there are loads of customers now looking for this type of product.
Absolutely.
And maybe the retailers they don't know that it's there. My husband always says, you're doing people a favor by telling them about your chocolate. More people want to know about it, they just don't know about it yet. So
yeah. I think that a very good avenue for you for marketing would be social media advertising.
Yes.
And going that route.
I'm so bad at it though, but yes, I do try to do all of that.
It is difficult, and it's a beast unto itself.
Yes.
It definitely is. I know one of my friends has a kayaking company, and they did a workshop with social media and SEO advertising company that specialized purely in that, and he reckoned that it was tremendous. It really drove up business a few weeks after that they had partook in it. And I think actually it was him and his wife that ran the company, and his wife was in charge of social media. But I think that the consultant company that they brought in, they were actually producing a lot of the content for them as well. I think they offer that service also. I don't know if that's something that I think from your perspective that would be very, very beneficial, because a lot of the people, a lot of the big upturn in vegan and more ethically conscious consumerism has come from social media itself.
Yeah, I think social media is a mixed bag for anybody. And I personally, I don't do anything on it from a personal perspective. Part of me thinks that social media is a curse on humanity.
Yeah.
But and I do really feel for, particularly maybe the younger people who think it's the be all and end all is the number of likes you get on your t-shirt or whatever it is. I just find it that sad. Having said that, obviously there are loads of groups of people who look at social media for a wide variety of purposes, and I have a following on Facebook, I have a following on Instagram, and I do put out some ads. I do them myself, which means they have varying success rates. But like that, yeah, maybe obviously an expert on social media would just hit the right notes that I'm just not getting. And I think that is one of my problems is the marketing of it, is the reach, is getting it out there to people in a world where the digital avenues are basically all that's the only show in town, really, aren't they?
Yeah, they've really overtaken, I think, traditional media.
Yeah.
Well, Claire, thank you very much for coming on the show, and
thank you, Fergal.
We wish you absolute all the best in achieving your 5-year plan. I'm sure you'll have no problems.
Well, thank you very much, Fergal. I really enjoyed chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you.
Thanks very much for listening. That has been the second episode of Locating Wisdom, the podcast. Catch you on the next one.